All right, we're continuing here in chapter 7 of How to Read the Bible for All It's Worth. We're going to begin on slide number 22. We're talking about how to read the Gospels by thinking vertically. Okay, so you're looking at the life of Jesus and the what's the word I want to say? The slant or the emphasis of the particular gospel writer. Okay, so you got to look at it from those two levels. Okay, so they give the example of Matthew in Matthew 20 verses 1 through 16 of Jesus's parable in the vineyard. Okay, so we're trying to understand. Okay, why did Matthew include the parable of the vineyard in that section of his gospel in chapter 20? Okay, so if you look at it horizontally, you'll realize that the same parable of the vineyard is also in Mark's gospel. Okay, Matthew follows a lot of that very, very closely. Okay, so you can see that Matthew 19, 1 through 30, and then chapter 20, 17 through 34 parallels Mark 10, 1 through 52. In Mark 10, verse 31, Mark says, "Many who are first will be last, and the last will be first." Okay, so Matthew uses that at the end of chapter 20, but where he diverges from Mark is that suddenly now he kicks in with the parable of the workers in the vineyard, which again, the individuals that started at the earlier part of the day, they were guaranteed a wage, and then of course as the day went on, every new group of workers that Jesus employed, so to speak, they got the same wage. Okay, and of course there's this idea of unfairness here. Here I worked all day long and I get the same amount as the guy that worked a half hour or something like that, okay? In other words, what gives? Well, in other words, Matthew is trying to show, you know why the first will be last and the last will be first? Is because he's trying to say that pay in the kingdom, again, if you go to slide number 23, pay in the kingdom is not predicated on what's fair, but on God's grace. So whatever you get paid, whatever you get compensated, so to speak, in this life or the next, is not contingent on your efforts, but it's contingent on the goodness and the grace of God. Okay, because we've got to understand we're all sinners. We have all fallen short of God's grace. Even after being born again, you're still going to sin, okay? There's still going to be issues in your life that the Lord is working on. So any good thing that we supposedly merit because of good behavior or some ministry exploit, it's all attributed to the grace of God, not on what is due us or owed us because of our initiative. Okay, so you kind of see what Matthew's coming at it at a different angle than Mark. Okay, they're both saying the same things, but the placement that Matthew he's trying to show you, many will be first, will be last, and the last will be first. He shows you the illustration of that through the parable of the workers in the vineyard. And again, I think it's very strategic. And I love how Matthew does that, because sometimes if you hear a saying, the first will be last and the last will be first, you're like, okay, that's fine. That seems a little bit abstract. But then when you show an actual story or parable, suddenly now that just comes alive, and you're like, oh, I get it now. Any good thing I have from God is not because of my own efforts; it's because of His grace. Whether I've been working for a long time in His kingdom, or whether somebody just came into the kingdom last week, we're all under God's grace here. There's nothing we have done to merit any good thing that the Lord provides for us. Okay, so in its original context, this parable probably served to justify Jesus' own accepting of sinners in light of the Pharisees finding fault with him. They think of themselves as having borne the burden of the work and henceforth are worthy of more pay. In other words, remember, one of the big issues that the Pharisees had with Jesus is, hey, he's eating with tax collectors and sinners and prostitutes and things like that. In other words, these individuals that have been living notoriously sinful lives are now suddenly accepted by this young upstart named Jesus. And here I've been faithful to God all my life, and what do I get out of it? In other words, if you think that way, you're missing the whole point of the kingdom, okay? It's not what I get out of it because I've been serving God a lot longer than these yahoos that are just getting saved off the streets, and they got tats and they got piercings and they've been kind of wackadoodle-doo all their lives, and then suddenly they get saved. And yeah, we're all We are all in God's kingdom because of his grace, not because of works, right? It is grace through faith that you're saved, not of works that lest any man boast. That's what Jesus is trying to convey in so many words through that parable, okay? So again, the point of the parable, God's grace to undeserving sinners, remains the same. What changed? The concept of discipleship, where those who have been forsaken all to follow Jesus are the last, who have now become the first, in contrast to Jewish leaders. Okay, so again, trying to show you how to think vertically. Okay, you're still, Mark's looking at the life of Jesus, Matthew's looking at the life of Jesus. You got the life of Jesus, right? That's the first level. But then the second level is the different slant that each writer takes gives us a different picture of Jesus. Okay, that's this idea of thinking vertically. So hopefully that helps. I'm going to stop here and move on to slide number 24, hermeneutical observations.